Today we have the honor of having Jorge Barter. He's a FIU alumni and from the BME department here. So he's been through the ranks in terms of senior design, he's been through all of that, and now he's doing R&D in Cordis, medical device company. So he'll be giving us some tips on his experience and journey, and both here in school as well as industry.
First, thank you for having me here. I always love coming to these, like helping out my fellow, FIU BME students, get some guidance and some tips from somebody who's seen it, right? So yeah, just to give a little context about myself, like Ali mentioned, I went through, FIU BME, all the senior design, all that stuff. I first chose biomedical engineering as a major because I was just very curious about like all kinds of different areas of like science and, like STEM and stuff, really, like, whether it's mechanical or electrical, all that stuff. And I realized, that this is an area where you can combine everything. And at the end of, and as I went more down the path, I realized that, at the end of the day, it's like patients' lives, right? And patients' quality of life too, that that ultimately our work is achieving, right? Definitely working in this field gives you a very big sense of purpose, right? Everything you're doing, impacts patients' lives. So that's kind of why I got into BME. And then, I went through senior design. We designed this like a wearable device for Parkinson's disease to help improve gait characteristics. And then right when I graduated, honestly, I was just applying everywhere really and then, I landed a job here at Cordis. Started out as a technician, and now I'm an R&D engineer. And then I chose industry too because, like you get to have an impact on, on the patient in a relatively short amount of time, right? Like the products that you're working on are going to be in the market in, about somewhere between 1 to 2 years to, 5 if it's like one that requires like a clinical trial.
For a typical day in R&D, how would that usually look like? Because as I understand, it could be anywhere between new product development or maybe sustaining of a current product.
For sure. Speaking from my own experience, I guess I could probably talk about it like in terms of the progression so far from when I started to how it would look like now. When I first started out as a technician, which would be kind of considered equivalent to like an intern role, I was very focused on testing, performance testing of products, like design verifications, process qualification, product qualification, PQ, and like just engineering, engineering testing for design characterization. Right, so it's very very hands-on in the lab, right? We're doing like tensile tests, essentially pulling sections of catheter to see at what force it fails at. We're doing simulated use testing where we'll actually track the device through an anatomical model and like deploy a stent or something or deploy a balloon, right? So pretty much all kinds of different tests, and the products that we work with here at Cordis, we're a cardiology and endovascular company, right? So we make all kinds of balloons, like angioplasty balloons, stents, definitely our smart control is probably our highest runner, right? For it's placed at the iliac and the SFA, the superficial femoral artery, right? We have closure devices, so the Minx grip closure device, and a bunch of other guiding catheters, guide wires, etc. So I pretty much had the opportunity to test pretty much like almost everything in our every single product category. And then as my role kind of progressed, it became more so focused on okay, instead of you conducting the testing now you're going to write the engineering test protocols, the design verification protocols, leading the testing, right? So now you have nowadays I would probably have like a team of technicians, and then I would provide them guidance and train them and show them how to do the test, supervise them, provide reports out to the leadership on the status of the testing, right? And obviously I would do some of the testing as well too, and definitely a lot of test method characterization, right? In addition to that, I'm also working on IQs, like installation qualifications for equipment, right? So we get fancy new equipment, right? Like a brand new vision system or a torque tester or what have you. And then we have to go through the whole process of validating it to make sure, that it's accurate, that it provides the output that the user needs. I'm currently the lab manager for our Miami Lakes R&D lab. So at that point, I'm basically accountable to ensure that our lab is providing the service level that is needed by by R&D, by the rest of the business. Sometimes other groups of the business use our lab for for CAPAs, for product failure investigations, things like that, right? And yeah, essentially continuously improving the lab, making sure that that we have the equipment that we need. So
I guess it's been a transition from area specialization to wearing multiple hats. And so now your R&D is anywhere between you're designing a product, or you're leading a test method, or you could be leading a team. But it's good. The mentee becomes a mentor at some point, and so now you go from being a team and to leading your own team. So I guess during the time that you were applying, were you considering other companies? And in general, how was the interview process for you like?
The way that I got my job at Cordis, essentially right after graduated, I graduated, I essentially just hunkered down and I just sent out as many applications as I could, but making sure that these applications are being read by someone, right? Making sure that if there's like a contact point, or somebody from a recruiting agency or whatever, always like call them, send them an email telling them that you're interested, with your resume, etc. Right? Just making sure that while you're applying to a lot of places, making sure that people see your applications. And then one of those people reached out, and we had an interview, I think it was like two pre-screenings, right? And then one final like in-person interview. So it's pretty much how it worked. It was first the hiring manager. Well, no, first it was the recruiter, then it was the hiring manager, then it was the VP of R&D, and then finally like an actual like in-person, like a panel, if you will. So that's kind of how that process went. But I definitely know a lot of colleagues of mine who got their roles through networking. Of course, networking is super valuable, right? Because if somebody already knows you and they know that you do good work and they know that that you're a good person to work with and all that, then it kind of saves them those extra steps of having to do additional due diligence on, there's like less of a risk or concern that they might not turn out the way you wanted to. So that's kind of why networking is important. But in my case, I got pretty lucky with the way that I applied to a lot of places. So
I think there's a saying that I read before or once, that luck is when opportunity and hard work come together. And so people say, "Oh, you got lucky." Yeah, you can say awesome, thank you, but we all really know it just means the hard work paid off. Networking, when you're with known people, or when you're recommending known people to a position, it's from a different perspective, a known commodity. Since the skills this person brings to the table, it kind of demystifies the recruitment process. Since hey, this person delivers good quality work, let's put this opportunity together. By any chance, throughout the process, were there any functions in the BME team besides R&D?
Yeah, definitely quality. A lot of people, there's definitely a lot of quality jobs out there, right? Most of it is very quality system and paperwork focused. I think like remediation projects, like validations, like all kinds of things like that. There's also manufacturing too. You're working on the manufacturing lines, right? Trying to optimize the process. Very fast-paced, dollars and cents, if you will. Very focused on cutting down costs. Leaning out the processes, right? There's definitely, I think so. I've known of a couple of people who went into regulatory as well too. Essentially, like interfacing with the regulatory agencies like the FDA and stuff like that. I think like marketing and R&D in a way kind of go together. In that,
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah, in that marketing defines the user need, and then R&D actually executes on how we're gonna meet that need too. So there's definitely a lot of switching between R&D and marketing in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with some marketing people, since they usually interact with the patients as well as clinicals. far as clinical staff members, and they know a little bit more of the feedback that most patients get or give for consumer complaints or etc. But the good thing about BME is, like you mentioned, you can stick to R&D if you want to, or if you want, can jump over to quality, regulatory. Like there's so many positions available in different functions. So if a certain skill set is not your taste, then you can jump over to around the corner, and you'll still be able to get involved. For students that would like to enter this space, particularly R&D, what are some skills that you would recommend that they consider looking into as soon as possible?
Yeah, skills for R&D, of course. So definitely modeling skills, like in SolidWorks and stuff. I know you guys in AEMB have done a great job at demonstrating these skills to teaching everybody how to use SolidWorks and design actual medical devices. So this is really, it's really great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, I can't take the credit for that. I think Claudia was here just a minute ago in the call. She was the one who brought that up. She told me to get on medical devices because pop culture icons won't cut it.
When you're in a starting position, like an entry level position, you're mostly doing like fixture designs, right? So like for example, like a test block that you put in your tensile tester to hold the sample in place, things like that, right? So any other skills? Definitely Minitab, like statistical analysis. Like definitely you should understand the fundamentals behind statistical analysis, because in design verification testing, we're doing a lot of like tolerance interval analysis, right? Determining what is like the lower bound of, let's say, like the tensile strength of a joint on a device, right? Determining, hey, like 99% of devices are going to be stronger than this, right? So being able to do things like that in Minitab, right? Gauge R&R analysis, which we use a lot for test method validation. ANOVAs, right? So just things like that. Just be able to do statistical analysis in Minitab and be able to come to statistically significant conclusions whenever you're presenting data, whenever you're analyzing data. Of course, practical hands-on experience is very valuable, right? So if there's a place where things happen, right? Whether it's like for R&D, it would be the R&D lab, right? The actual lab. In manufacturing, it's the manufacturing lines. If you're in sales, it's the cath lab, right? So just try to be in the place where things happen, right? And just get try to get as much hands-on practical experience as you can, because that's essentially the bedrock, if you will, of all the activities that are going on, right? By doing a lot of testing, you understand how things fail. By understanding how things fail, you're better able to later down the line as a project manager determine what are the risks inside of a device, right? So that's why hands-on experience is valuable.
I think that's right. I've had the opportunity to meet other people who were offered internships throughout the summer. And in particular, they were like, oh, is it on site or in person? They were like, oh, it was on site, but I had the option to go remote. And they decided to go remote. And I was just shaking my head like, why? Why would you want to go remote? Everything's on site. And now you can't build anything. Yeah, or at least for R&D. But since there's tasks for sure that can be done remote, but for R&D, I just want to be where the building is at. So I've had the chance to, like you mentioned, get those skills. And it's nice to always have that physical product at the end and be like, hey, I made this. Can research in industry be possible? And if so, is there anything students should look at?
Well, I know for sure in industry you do clinical trials. So that's technically a publication.
Okay.
So obviously that definitely counts, right? There's definitely a lot of physicians doing clinical studies with their devices too. So if you're on the clinical team, right, you'd be more focused on those things. So in R&D, right? So I think you might have alluded to this in a way in that like R&D is definitely a lot of like product development focused, very like heavier on the D side as opposed to R. But I think for very like preliminary, like early stage projects, you do tend to do a lot of like literature review and kind of like initial characterization testing, right? Like just trying out a bunch of different prototypes, seeing and essentially just evaluating them as you go along, right? Iterating continuously.
Right. So more along of finding the bounds of what could be possible according to available resources and literature and available technology at the time.
Right. So essentially, right, understanding and also like understanding deeply the clinical need too, right? Looking at like all the clinical research behind a particular condition,
what is one skill that you learned in school that you would have not met in industry?
Well, definitely all the classes that don't have to do with cardiovascular engineering and, quality system stuff like senior design. I mean, obviously, like anything that's not that, and obviously, and not biomaterials, not. So I guess like I don't know, signals and systems. Like, obviously, I didn't learn anything about signals and systems in Cordis because I'm not working with that kind of stuff. But to get to the true nature of your question, I guess in school you kind of learn how to learn in a way, and then in industry you take learning how to learn, and then you actually figure things out, right? So BME kind of gives you that platform to branch out and learn.
What is one thing that you learn in industry that you wouldn't have learned in school?
I'd say more so overall, it's kind of like you're immersed in an environment, right? In this whole industry, quality system kind of environment, right? So in a way, you kind of like learn like well, I wouldn't say subconsciously, but kind of like around those lines where you kind of get into the rhythm of how things are done, right? In terms of like following procedures and like documentation and how you like maneuver these things, right? I mean, definitely becoming lab manager here at Cordis has definitely given me like overall like management skills in that you're responsible for so many things, right? That you have to learn how to delegate, right, to the technicians that are working with you, right? And things like that, right? Like managing projects, like project management too. So
that's right. I think definitely one thing that I learned over my internship is time management. Very allow me to focus on what's important right now for this team in this hour, and what priorities are in terms of both individually and with a team. Just at the end of the day, I think there's so much you can do by yourself, no matter how smart you are, and productivity always is better when you're with a team and delegating tasks.
Yeah, and then to add to that as well too. I mean, obviously, like a much more in-depth understanding of cardiovascular anatomy and physiology too, right? Because that's essentially what we do here. So.
Yeah, I think that's a given. So you definitely will learn more about the product or the specialization you're doing. But on top of that, the soft skills that might be applied in school, but they're definitely reinforced and they're used in industry. Looking back, what are some resources that you wish you would have had in undergrad or wish you would have known if you were looking to a position like this or in a career like this?
Definitely, like it would be nice if students back in in our BME program got more they were kind of guided more towards internship opportunities. I think that would help a lot of people get that initial experience that I was referring to about the hands-on experience and all that stuff, because internships are definitely super valuable for for demonstrating to employers that, hey, like this person has demonstrated that they can get the job done, right? Definitely clinical experience too, like talking to physicians and stuff. I've done a lot more of that here at Cordis, right? Doing voice of customer and like design validation studies and things like that. But man, yeah, like talking to physicians a lot more back in FIU BME would be great too, because that defines the need. So
I think it's funny, once you know the secret, it becomes very easy to repeat and rinse the process, and by that you get better. But until you know the secret, it's not easy to find out what the secret is. So in particular, the secret to both skills needed to complete a certain position and the secret as to how to get there. So one resource that I wish I had was definitely be able to connect with more people, or back then, which I'm making up for lost time. So I think we're in good shape. Do you read any self-improvement books? And if so, what's your favorite one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually reading Deep Work, which is about how why it's valuable to dedicate large uninterrupted periods of time to to really zeroing in on stuff, right, and not getting distracted, right? I think I've also read Atomic Habits, and that one's really good at setting a framework for how to build habits too. So
I really enjoyed Atomic Habits. It was a nice read.
Yeah.
would recommend that to anyone. Where would you like to be 3 years or 5 years from now? Since I understand, since you started 2 years ago, you've done quite a lot of progress, and now you're responsible for more people's success. So, where would you envision yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always looked into, found it interesting, to become maybe like director, right? At that point you have like accountability over all these like different programs that you're working on, that R&D is working on too, and like again, taking that leadership role, interfacing with all these other different groups like marketing, the leadership of like marketing, sales, and operations, all that too. So I think that would be pretty interesting place to be. Yeah. I'm definitely looking into getting like a master's in like probably like engineering management or something like that too. So
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing a master's with some engineering management electives. So I'm right around the corner with the people who are doing full-time engineering management masters, and very different take on the business from a different perspective, since say management versus actual technical engineering. What are some goals that you'd like to accomplish, and what is success for you?
Honestly, just honing in on just delivering excellence, right? Delivering even more value, to whatever I'm doing at the moment, really, and just learning more in terms of whether it's clinical use case or learning more process development, learning more design, right? So generally, yeah, just learning a lot more, really, just making sure I keep the sword sharp.